particularly for a professional services company. Their data pool is a bunch of meeting transcripts. But most of the transcriptions just sit in the software, right? In your Fireflies or Otter or Fathom. They're not really useful. So how do we make those accessible and make them into light up the data, in other words, right? Like all the work you're doing can just be embedded in code, and you don't have to code anymore to do it. You can just be like, Claude, here's how I do this skill. Turn it into a skill. And it does it. And now you can share that with anyone and they can use it. And you've never written a line of code in your life.
You're listening to OwnerRx with Alan Pentz, the podcast for business owners who want to scale without sacrifice. Each episode delivers battle-tested strategies from the OwnerRx Playbook Library, showing you exactly how to build systems that run without you. Here's your host, Alan Pentz.
All right, we are back on the OwnerRx podcast with the lovely Tonya Berenson, straight out of San Cugat, España. How are things in San Cugat today?
They're okay. It's Monday. Mondays, sometimes you can feel a little out of sorts on Mondays, but good. It's always good to come back to the OwnerRx podcast.
Yes. So what are we discussing today?
Let's talk about agents.
Ooh, AI agents, the topic du jour.
Yes, AI agents.
So I wrote a little bit about this in the newsletter, which you should all check out at ownerrx.com. You can sign up for the newsletter.
Yeah, it was a good one today. You were talking about why are some companies doing better than others? Big companies are doing better at this.
Yeah, so there's some data out that I saw about just I think they were using revenue per employee as a metric and showing how since the pandemic, large companies have been increasing their revenue per employee. So obviously more productive, right? The definition of productivity. Mm-hmm. And increasing it much faster than small businesses. So what's going on? To some extent, there's probably other stuff happening, right? I'm not going to say it's all AI, but AI has definitely been contributing to it. And then the gap is growing wider since 2022, 2023, when ChatGPT came out. And I think there are a bunch of reasons for this that are pretty interesting. But one that I'm really starting to see, because I've also been doing some AI training for business owners.
Yeah,
and I've been doing, and then with my other companies that I'm involved in, we're starting an AI, an automation commercial practice, helping companies automate, and seeing it even in my own companies. Like I think one of the biggest issues out there is that if you are an existing company and you have operated without a consistent and organized data strategy, which I would say is 99.99% of small companies, it is harder. Yeah, one thing that I didn't fully appreciate starting out is it's a lot harder to adopt AI when you don't have your data organized or don't have your processes organized like that. So that's sort of boring. Nobody likes to talk about that. They want cool AI stuff. But if everybody's operating spreadsheets on their own computer and you're saving stuff inconsistently all across your cloud accounts, or some stuff's in Dropbox, some stuff's in Drive. It's a mess, right? And AI can't necessarily take advantage of it. And so you have to start out sort of structured to be able to really use AI most effectively. And so the first big reason I think a lot of these bigger companies, and I think it's particularly in the Magnificent Seven and large, financial institutions like JPMorgan or something, Bank of America. These guys have been working on data, creating data structure and making their data lakes and all these different things for years, right? They were doing that a long time ago. So their ability,
right.
I think the first thing is their ability to adopt AI and make immediate impact is a lot higher because they know where to go to get the data. And so that'd be one, I think, is a huge issue. And then sort of related to that, and what I think is going to really require more AI, required to get the full value of AI from most small businesses, is that a lot of them don't have the data, right? So they don't have large transaction volumes and other kind of data that maybe they haven't operated for 100 years, right? So they just don't have the level of data they need to really have AI operate as insightfully as it does at large companies. So one of the things I've been really looking at is, it's interesting, like if we think about meetings, and so every company has tons of meetings, and this, particularly in like professional services, that's like all you're doing. Right now, those meetings are pretty much dark data. You can't query them or access them. Maybe there's some meeting notes somewhere, right? We're starting to use AI transcribers, but most of the transcriptions just sit in the software, right, in your Fireflies or Otter or Fathom, and they're not really useful. So I've been thinking a lot about how that's sort of the data pool for a lot, particularly for a professional services company. Their data pool is a bunch of meeting transcripts, right? And so how do we make those usable and accessible and, make them into light up the data, in other words, right? So I think that there's a huge mission here. I've been looking at it for the OwnerRx tool, is like, could we create a system where meetings are done, they're auto-classified by AI to figure out what type they are, or it can use metadata and meeting invites. But we basically understand what meeting happened, who was there, and then we can run a series of agents on it to create whatever artifacts need to come out of a meeting. So if it's you have a project update meeting with a team, or you have a client meeting, there's some kind of follow-up email that needs to be created. You need to update the project plan. That can be done with the AI. You need to look for insights or things you missed in the meeting. That can be done by an agent. And so, but then the real key is that we start saving the meeting transcripts and breaking them down into, the fancy word would be like semantic. So it'd be like, hey, what topics were covered? What did we say about those topics? What decisions were made? And that can be saved in a way that it's all tagged, right? So like what that would be is sort of like what's called a vector database. So that's like a way that you save information, like non-structured verbal text information for AI large language models to read. So you don't need to know the technique, but just understand that it's like saving, all right, there was a meeting about client A, and then it knows that that client A is there, so it has that piece of information, and then it can link to related topics, like we talked about, project performance with client A, and we talked about XYZ stuff, and those concepts that you talked about can also be linked to project A, but also sit on their own, right? And so now you have this vector database that can relate all these concepts together. That's what AI is really doing. So if you have every meeting pulled apart this way, now think about it. You have a way to query the entire organization, what's happening. So like the CEO or the project manager can come in and be like, what they call it is like a graph. So like Facebook created a graph of your friends. So now it can show you who your friends are because it's who you're linked to in Facebook and who you talk to, right? Now we're creating a graph of a client, not a graft, GRAPH. And so we're creating a graph of like a worker in a company, an employee, creating a graph of a client, creating a graph of a division, creating a graph of a company. And so you can go in there and query it and be like, what's happening with client A? What happened in the company this week? You can start chatting with the meeting data, essentially, right? So to me, this is like a super powerful, that's where the data for most small, particularly service-based companies is going to come from. Obviously then linked to your CRM, you can have a connection in, to the CRM, to your email, to your calendar, to financial system, whatever. But once all that stuff's connected together and you've made the dark data of meetings, you've lit that up. Now your ability to understand and gain insights from the company is tremendous. And I think this is a key step for small companies to get the kind of benefits that Bank of America is getting out of AI. So I think those are the two of the core things are like, the data isn't structured in small companies yet, right? And then they don't have a lot of data, period, because they're not dealing with large volumes of transactions or whatever it is that, Bank of America and Apple and everybody have, right? They just have a lot less data. But they do have this data that's available that's not being used, which is like the meeting data, right? And so I think getting that meeting data lit up is going to be a key step.
And that's huge, like getting that data. I mean, just being able to look back at that in an easily accessible way, could inform so much.
Right. Now, there's clearly a bunch of concerns people are going to have about that, right? Like privacy and like, are they tracking me? And unfortunately, I think that's going to be the case. I think we have to, because then, the reality is you're already saving some data about a meeting in a folder somewhere, right? So that's available, but this is just a little bit more granular version. So I think, we're going to have governance and privacy concerns. They'll have to be dealt with, but I don't see us not getting there.
So you mean privacy concerns on the part of an employee who says, I don't want them recording, being able to access what I
boss.
Yeah.
Right. So there'll have to be ways to turn off the recorder and exempt information and, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is most of this is being recorded anyway. So we'll get through that. But I think it's a key step for small businesses. And I think the third thing that I saw, the big difference why you're seeing this split in small and large company revenue per employee is just that big companies can afford to hire a bunch of consultants to come in and customize everything for them. So they don't have to rely on the owner learning something or having enterprising employees that are willing to go above and beyond and learn something new. They can just hire McKinsey or Deloitte or Accenture to come in and make it happen. So I think that's, and then what I'm seeing on the small business side or just in the agent side in general is that we have really good solutions for an individual person, like you working in ChatGPT and using connectors and, I run Claude code on my terminal and I have agents that I built with Claude code that run off of files on my computer. And they're just processes that I run, right? So I take the meeting transcript and have it decompose it into all these things so it can be searched later, blah, blah, blah. That's just all running on my computer. But my ability to scale that to a 50, 100, 300 person company, those tools are very rudimentary at this point. I think we've only, we were talking earlier in a team meeting about, if we're going to build agents, do we want to, Google just came out, just upgraded their system called Vertex AI. Microsoft has Agent Copilot. OpenAI has an agent builder now. Those things have only been around for a month or two. So
yeah, it's crazy.
So this whole thing is not developed, and those are still harder for small businesses. They probably still need somebody pretty adept to come in and integrate all that stuff. But think about it, that didn't even exist 3 months ago. So your ability these tools were just inaccessible to most small businesses. But Accenture could do stuff like that, right? They could build all that kind of infrastructure for you. So I think that, that's a big barrier. Now that the market will fix that over time. But if I was going to say to a small business, what is the one thing you could do right now, based on what I've seen, I would say, go figure out where all your data is and mandate where it needs to be. Like, go create a map. Yeah, like what folder has what files and what file structure do you have for every project or customer or whatever it is you work in, and like what are people using on their computer that needs to be in the cloud, and how is it updated? Like, if you have all that set, then plugging AI in is a lot easier. Like, we're building an agent right now that, can like read your P&L and balance sheet and create a dashboard for you. Okay. Well, where's the dashboard going to be?
Yeah.
Where's the, who has access to what, like permission structures, and like, that's all not AI. That's all just like,
I mean, it's seemingly basic stuff, right? But it's fundamental.
Oh, most companies don't have it, right?
That always surprises me when you say that. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a pain. Like, if we were going to increase OwnerRx's size and hire a bunch of people, we'd have to figure all that out. And I don't want to do that. I just want to, excuse me, I just want to run it on my machine and change it whenever I want and do what I want.
Right.
But
the fun
once
stuff.
you get all this complex, that's the fun stuff.
Right. But you got to do the other stuff first. It's like the foundation of the house, right?
Yeah. So that to me is these are the big factors that need to be worked through for small businesses really to take advantage of this. And, I think you're going to get a lot of systems that you already use that, you've seen it, like the little blue star that's supposed to be the AI component, right, that you hit. And like those things just don't work very well. And like, I've been very disappointed. I don't want to get my AI mitigated through my crappy 20-year-old SaaS tool. I want to have like the latest stuff. But that's going to take a little longer for that to come. And obviously at OwnerRx, we're trying to work on that to help bring agent processes to you faster. But it's hard, and it's kind of unclear what the delivery mechanism is going to be going forward. Like, are you going to build in, right? What I see emerging is three main players with a fourth kind of in a very interesting position. So, you have Google, Microsoft, they're the big legacy players, right? So they have all your productivity software. So that's their entry point, right? Google has its own models, obviously. And so they both built out, like I mentioned, these agent kind of studios where you can build agents and manage them. But it's really unclear like how they're going to get deployed to the organization. And like, I've been looking through it, and it seems like, obviously there'll be like some kind of interface that managers will use, the people who actually build the agents and deploy them. But it looks to me like people are going to use like Teams and Google Chat and Slack to like @mention agents, right? So they would be like, oh, @mention newsletter agent or financial dashboard agent, and like just build it through that interface.
So like I could Slack in a couple of months maybe.
Or you'd be in like Sheets or Excel, and there'd be like a bunch of agents that can use Sheets and Excel. I don't get, I mean, that's going to work, I guess. But I just feel like being trapped in the productivity software is a wrong approach. Like, to be honest, within a year, Claude can probably just spin up a spreadsheet software on the fly, and you don't need Excel and Sheets. So like, why would you be in that interface? I don't see that long term, but clearly right now that's where most people are all day, right? So, and then OpenAI, I guess, would see it going all through the chat interface in OpenAI, where you'd have a bunch of agents that could be built into your productivity software. But I think they're the clearest example of somebody who's like, well, I could probably just build the productivity software for you when you need it. So like a word processing document can just be a program that OpenAI runs. You don't need a separate Word or Docs. It can just be like a code execution. It's like, all right, I need this as a X kind of document. I mean, it's already doing that, right? It just doesn't have like file storage right now, but that doesn't seem like a huge barrier. So like OpenAI, I bet it's going to want you to work in ChatGPT, and then it'll just give you all these programs that you can use and connect in your data from different systems, and then it would have some kind of file storage system there. But that would mean like, getting rid of getting rid of Microsoft and Google almost completely. But no matter what, with those three main ones, you're trapped in their ecosystem. So you have to use their models, Microsoft's going to try to keep their productivity software front and center, I would assume.
OwnerRx will have a better way.
That's right. We might have a better way. We're going to experiment with ways to kind of abstract that whole layer where you're like working in our interface and you can work across any one of those systems, right? So you don't have to worry about them. And so you could take your agent content, we can embed it in Microsoft, Google, OpenAI, Anthropic. And like, if one gets better at something than the other, we can just switch it out, right? So you could interact and create and talk to agents, figure out which ones to use through potentially an OwnerRx interface and not have to worry about the agent war, platform war underneath. So that's something we're looking at right now. So that's why it's been iterating and taking longer. But, and I wanted to mention the other player, I think, is Anthropic with Claude. And they're doing really interesting stuff right now. And I don't really understand. So they've taken this code-based approach where Claude Code is like the tool that every programmer in the world is using. And it's just an agent to, you just tell it what you want to program and it goes and programs. But what I've seen increasingly is like we run our company on Claude Code. Like we're not coding. We're just saying like, hey, we need a meeting agenda from this meeting. And we tell Claude Code to go run the meeting agenda agent, and it goes and runs it and spits out a file. Right now, that's all on our computers. Right.
Even I've learned that.
Yeah, even Tanya's doing it, so you can do it. Right?
There's hope.
That's right. So, but that's not scalable to a big organization because of the versioning and document storage. We use GitHub, but it's not perfect and it's clunky and it's hard to use. So I wouldn't recommend people do that. That's why we're trying to build OwnerRx to be that kind of layer. But Anthropic has been building all these new tools that are really interesting. I think next week we should probably talk a little bit about their skills feature that they just developed. And they also just piloted, I think it's in demo beta, so Microsoft now, because they don't really have a model, they did this investment in OpenAI. Yeah. So they have rights to all the OpenAI IP for their Microsoft Copilot stuff. But I think they're seeing, they just did this deal, so OpenAI can go public, and they own like a third of it or 27% or something. But they're not exclusive to them anymore, right? So they don't really like own OpenAI. So now they're allowing Anthropic to bring Claude in. And so rather than just use the Copilot feature, which uses OpenAI, you can now use Claude and Excel. And Claude's a lot better. Claude can build like an awesome Excel spreadsheet that OpenAI is not as good at. And so they're interesting because they're trying all these different models of delivery, right? So you've got Claude Code, and a command line that people are using for programming or we're using for day-to-day work, knowledge work. They're putting it in Excel, so you can call it there. So they're just experimenting with where to go. And this new skills thing is really interesting. We'll talk about next week.
Can you give
we're seeing, essentially, I think we should probably do like a deeper dive on where we see each model going.
Yeah.
But it's basically skills are just like a best practice way of doing something. And so really it was originally built for programmers so that like when we use Claude Code and it spits out a file, it's a markdown file, which is just like a text file that gets saved that programmers tend to use. But say we want a Word or a PDF that we can send to someone. Well, before Claude Code had, I guess it could do it. I'm not sure. but we might have had to put it into like another model to make it that way. But now they created a skill that's like documents. And so it basically has the way to turn your markdown into a Word or a PDF or whatever.
You could send somebody.
Right. And so you just download that skill. You say, hey, Claude, go download this skill. And now it's in a skill library that it has access to, and it goes and reads how to make a Word document, and then it does it. And so you think about it, you can do that with almost anything. So you could say, like, here's our brand guidelines. So every time, Claude can, if you're working in Claude doing something and you say brand guideline, it's got a way to scan skills and it'll see that recognition and it'll automatically do it. And if it doesn't, you can just call it. You can be like, use the skill. So if you think
really
about
cool.
this,
that's
I started thinking about it the other day. So this is not the preview, this is the whole thing, right? So
sorry, Alan.
That you have like, if you had the best programmer in the world, right? He or she would have a bunch of ways to do something. And like, I'm going to write an API. I'm going to do a database migration. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Well, what happens when this person saves everything the way they do everything as a skill? And like Anthropic started doing this. It's like, oh, you want to do a database migration? Okay, here's a skill of how we do it with Claude Code. Well, now I can download all those and I don't know anything about how to do any of that stuff. And I just say, use all the skills to do this, and it'll use everyone's best practice. You can also think about just putting everything about your company into skills. It's like, this is how we do project reports. This is how we talk to clients. This is how we do this. And you can call it up and it'll just do it for you, right? So you can embed the entire logic of your company into a Claude Code. And I mean, it's kind of, I'm still like digesting what it means. It's kind of insane. And those become shareable as a team, and they're portable. You can just like zip them. Like this guy, Nate B. Jones, who I was first hearing about it from, he's like, yeah, I took all this Claude skills, because they're just like Python files that run. They're not like particular to Claude Code. Just Claude Code has a way to look for them and use them. But if you take a zip file of all of them and put them into ChatGPT and say, refer to this file while you're doing it, it will use them as well, right? So it's not, they're portable. But it's a really interesting new paradigm for like how everything is just code. Like that's the mental shift you have to make. Like all the work you're doing can just be embedded in code, and you don't have to code anymore to do it.
And
you can just be
crazy.
like, Claude, here's how I do this skill. Turn it into a skill. And it does it. And now you can share that with anyone and they can use it. And you've never written a line of code in your life. So
and it's not intimidating when you put it that way, because when you start talking about coding, a lot of people, not just myself, are like, oh my God, coding. Like, I don't even have.
You've coded. You've coded.
Well, right. So that's what's so cool about this. Like,
I mean, my belief is, and we should do a longer thing on this, is that the whole thing that started was like, oh, no one's going to, we don't need programmers anymore. It used to be, you tell like, if you gave job advice to somebody, you'd be like, learn to program, right? And then it was like, oh, now all the programmers are going to go out of business. And I think I've said this before in the podcast. It's like, no, everyone is becoming a programmer. That's what's happening. And like, whether you even know how to write code or not, within a year or two, you're going to be programming, essentially, vibe coding with all the, who knows what the model will look like. But what if you're just in a command interface, you're just in a chat interface. That's all a command interface is a chat window. And you've got a bunch of skills loaded that tell you how to do everything. And all you're doing is like, hey, I need to do this for my job today. And it spins up things that do it. And that's what coding is going to be. And so like the difference between thinking and coding is disappearing. Right? So it's just our ability to talk to computers, to tell them to do stuff for us. That's what's happening. And like it's the same thing as like the difference between handwriting and book printing, right? I mean, that's all that's changing. It's the access to information and the ability to use it. So just think about it. Within a year or two, you're going to be talking to your computer and it's going to be doing everything in your job for you. That's all you're going to do.
Wow.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
a good one to.
with that weighty.
I think that's a good way to send people off. Put
That's
that in
right.
your pipe and smoke it.
Well, until next week.
All right. See you then.
Talk to you then.
Bye.
You've been listening to OwnerRx with Alan Pentz. Want to apply what you just learned? Try our AI business advisor at ownerrx.com. It has all the insights and lessons from this podcast, plus hundreds of playbooks, ready to solve your specific business challenges. OwnerRx. Stop being the bottleneck. Start being the owner.